This is a list of every number 1 ranked wrestler right now. But those rankings were totally different at the beginning of the season in November. In fact, there are 10 number 1 ranked wrestlers who've lost throughout this season. I'm going to let you know every single one of them. But it may be easier to start off with the guys who've been number 1 the whole year. Those guys are Iowa's Spencer Lee at 125 and Penn State's Roman Bravo Young and Carter Strachey at 133 and 174. Yeah. That's the full list. By the way, the following rankings are by Flow Wrestling, and if you want to check out the full list, you can check out down in the description below with the sign up. So the season started with a bang at the NWC All-Star Classic, where the first number 1 ranked wrestler fell. That was Cole Matthews of Pitt, who lost to Andrew Alvarez of Northern Colorado. Technically, that loss didn't count against his resume because the All-Star Classic is just an exhibition, but Matthews ended up taking a loss a few weeks later anyways to Jordan Titus of West Virginia. Alvarez has remained the number 1 undefeated guy at the weight since that time and even won a Big 12 title. But there was another number 1 ranked wrestler who lost at the same event. This was Princeton's Quincy Monday, who lost to David Carr of Iowa State. At the time, Monday was down at 157, being that number 1 ranked guy, and he bumped up to take on David Carr. Of course, Carr ended up winning this bout by decision. And I guess you could call Carr a killer this season because he's not taken out just one number 1 ranked wrestler, but 2. This other guy he took out was arguably more impressive because he had a long winning streak dating back to the 2021 NCAA Championships. But eventually, David Carr knocked off Keegan O'Toole of Mizzou in a dual meet by a near major decision. And to add on to that, he pinned him in overtime at the Big 12 Championships. Of course, at the time of the Big 12 Championships, David Carr was the number 1 ranked wrestler and will be the number 1 seed at the national tournament. Now, some people say that O'Toole could have kept his win streak going if he just hit that subscribe button. Seriously, it has magical properties and may even be able to make you into a national champ. Just for hitting subscribe, here's a clip of a sweet wrestling move to say thank you. So there have been 2 number 1 ranked wrestlers at 165 pounds throughout the year, but at 197 and 285, there have actually been 3 guys at the spot throughout various times. At 197 pounds, Penn State's Max Dean started the season at number 1 as the reigning national champion, but he ended up taking 2 losses in the same weekend. One to Michael Beard of Lehigh, the other to Ethan Laird of Ryder. So that allowed Mizzou's undefeated Rocky Elam to step into that top ranking. That is, until he lost to Oklahoma State's Luke Serber in February. And at this point, another number 1 ranked wrestler jumped into that top rank. This was Pitt's Nino Bonacorsi, a former NCAA finalist. Nino's story is fun because he skyrocketed from number 10 ranked at the beginning of the year all the way up to number 1 in winning an ACC title. He's looking pretty strong coming into nationals. And bumping up to 285 pounds, we actually have a pretty similar story. 2022 NCAA finalist Colton Schultz could step into that number 1 spot now that Minnesota's Gable Steveson was out of the picture. But it wasn't too long before he was upset by AJ Nevels of South Dakota State at the Cliff Keen Las Vegas Invitational. And there it looked like maybe he was injured, but just a few weeks later, he was beat again by Dayton Pitzer of Pitt at Midlands. This allowed Penn State fans to rejoice as Greg Kirkfleet took over that number 1 rank at heavyweight, but then they were disheartened whenever he lost in January in a dual meet to Mason Parris of Michigan. Parris beat Kirkfleet again to win his first Big 10 championship and finished the season undefeated going into the national tournament. To me, he's looking like the most dominant heavyweight. But at this point, there are 3 weights we haven't covered yet, and 2 of them had number 1 ranked guys who lost and were pretty shocking to the wrestling world. Honestly, probably the most so on this entire list. The third guy is Nebraska's Peyton Robb, who took that number 1 spot at 157 pounds after Quincy Monday bumped up to 165. He remained undefeated throughout the regular season and didn't take a loss until the Big 10 championship finals against Penn State's freshman Levi Haines. Now, I'd still consider Peyton Robb a heavy favorite at the national championships, but not as much as this next guy. Penn State's Aaron Brooks at 184 pounds is easily favored to win the national title, but he took an early season loss to Marcus Coleman of Iowa State at the collegiate wrestling duels. He lost by a 9-7 decision, and this was only the 3rd loss of his entire career. To elaborate, this isn't the first season Brooks has lost and went on to win a national title. Last year, he lost to Miles Amin of Michigan, and in 2020, he lost to Taylor Venz of Nebraska. In fact, 2021 was the only year he went undefeated to win a national title. But despite Coleman when beating him, Brooks remained at the number 1 spot throughout the year based on other ranking criteria. Another number 1 who lost but still kept his number 1 ranking was easily the biggest upset of the entire year. But at the beginning of the season, I actually predicted that this upset could happen. So why were fans so shocked? Well, let's look at the stats. It was a number 1 ranked wrestler who has 3 national titles and a 75 match winning streak dating back to 2017. Yet Wisconsin's Austin Gomez didn't care as he knocked off Cornell's Yanni Diakomahalis in a 9-3 decision, giving him the only home duel loss of his career. But wait, because if you're a fan of underdog stories, then you have to watch this video about the worst recruits who actually won a national title. Trust me, it's pretty shocking stuff.